Nice introduction. Thank you.
Okay. Probably just one quick thing is that we are recording the session today, so I've just started the recording. So just so that you guys are aware.
Yeah.
Sorry, back to Ruth.
Okay.
I didn't mean to interrupt.
No, that's good. Yeah, so thank you so much, Arthur. That was a really great introduction. I know you guys have sort of been waiting because we were getting organized. So let's dive in. I'm going to start sharing my screen, and yeah, we'll take it from there. So let's start here. Can you all see the screen?
Yep.
Yep. And making sure that that we can hear me okay. You're all okay with my sound? Yep. Alrighty. So I'm gonna just put you guys into a different view so I can just focus on the talk, but there will be opportunities to talk as well. So we'll move into that in a little bit. Now, where's the way? We'll start with a little bit of background on me so that you know who I am and what I'm talking about a little bit. So my name is Ruth, and I'm the founder of Sunrise Well, and my aim is to educate, empower, and energize people to live well. And I'm really, really passionate about what I do. I talk about all these areas around mindfulness and well-being and anything connected to well-being, really. And I mostly work in the corporate or business space. So my background, I've been meditating myself for 25 plus years. So I was introduced at a really young age, or that's what I like to think, but it was, I was 15 when I first was introduced to meditation, and absolutely changed my life. It was a real anchor for me throughout my life, and I'm very passionate to share it with other people. I've been teaching for 20 years or so. I'm currently doing a master's in biomedical meditation therapy and allied health. So it's a real research-based course around meditation and mindfulness. My background is, so I did a postgraduate diploma in international public health, psychology, health sociology, and a couple of certifications, yoga, 500-hour yoga teacher, wellness coaching. So anything around wellness, I'm probably investigating it. And I consider myself a lifelong learner. So I wouldn't say, I don't like to think of myself as an expert. I feel like I'm constantly a student and I'm constantly learning. So yeah, going into the next slide. Working together, if you do like what I'm talking about, or you want to bring me into your organization, I do lots of different things. So I have a wellbeing programs where I do assessments, interviews, and create strategies to help organizations move forward. I do single workshops or ongoing workshops on different topics around wellbeing, do classes, mindfulness classes. Sometimes people want to just have a little taste of mindfulness, and you just come in and do one session. Sometimes it's ongoing. Coaching, also leadership coaching, sometimes also working with individuals who are not coping so well. So maybe if their stress is out of control, or they're not getting their well-being sorted out, and the typical avenues are not working. So maybe you've gone through a psychologist, or we had support in different ways, and the management want to try something new. Then sometimes I go in and do some coaching with them to help them move forward. I also have a course at the moment. So this course is on Udemy, and it's basically an elongated version of what I'm going to talk about tonight. So if you're interested and you kind of want to go a little bit deeper, I've got the same layout, the same kind of slides, and me talking over the top, but going into a little more depth and doing some self-reflective exercises and assessments, and also guided practices. And because we've already covering some of it tonight, and because I wanted to, I've got this course for you guys. If you're interested in going further, just jot down the code. So it's normally $70, but you can take it for 20 with this code here, and I can pop it into the comments later on as well. So that's 2021_Briz_Agile. So if you feel like it's something you want to explore a bit further. Just going back, a little bit about me as well that I didn't mention before. Basically, I'm from Southeast Queensland. I'm from Brisbane. I did my university here, but I was away. I've been away for 12 years or so. So I traveled a lot in my early 20s, lived in a few different countries, but then I also moved to Canberra. So I know that we've got at least one person here from Canberra. Yeah, and I was also in Sydney. So I worked for the Department of Health and Aging in Canberra, and then I worked in Sydney in higher education and met my husband down there, who's actually from Spain. He's not from Sydney, but we stayed there for a while and we moved back here a couple of years ago, maybe 1.5 years ago, 2 years ago. And of course, with COVID, I've also had 2 children. I haven't got out and networked, basically, long story short. So this is a really great opportunity for me just basically to meet people here in Brisbane. So do reach out. I'm on all social media with Sunrise Well as my name, and LinkedIn. So reach out, make connections. I'm really happy to meet people here. So please do connect with me. And now we'll move on to the content. So there's quite a few things we're going to cover. So I'm trying to keep pace to my voice so that we can make sure that we cover everything and that people get a chance also to talk. So first of all, we'll talk through some of the key elements of emotional intelligence. We'll also look at mindfulness in a basic introduction. We'll then have a discussion and activity section. And the 4th section you can see, we'll be talking about how to bring it into the workplace, both of these topics. And then we'll finish off with some questions. And you'll see 2 stars, one next to number 3 and one next to number 5. Those 2 stars indicate a good time to talk. So we'll be opening things up if we can, unmuting people and having discussions at that time. If you do have questions outside of that time, just maybe jot them down so you don't forget. And before we dive too far in, I just want to ask you to think about the last time you felt upset. And I use upset as a generic term to indicate any kind of feeling that might feel negative. So sad, angry, disappointed, frustrated, worried, anything that you can name. When were you last upset at home, and when were you last upset at work? So just maybe take a moment and think about if you can find a specific time. Might have been just a few minutes ago, might have been today, might have been last week. And if you can't find a specific time, I think you might just be able to think of it in general and ask yourself, did you behave the same way in both places? The other thing to think about that you can sort of ponder is when you had those emotions of feeling sad, feeling angry, did they last, or how long did they last? So see if you can think about length of time connected to that as well. So this is really just for you to think about at this point. And we'll move into the next section. So emotional intelligence, in a nutshell, I guess you could say, is the ability to feel your feelings, know why you're feeling it, and then be aware of the impact your feelings have on others. So feeling your feelings, it sounds really simple, but the truth is that a lot of the way that we've been brought up and the way that we live our life, we tend to not feel our feelings. We tend to push through our feelings a lot of the time, or not have the language or the ability to talk about or name our feelings or understand even where they are in our bodies. So when we're feeling a feeling, we actually have a visceral reaction to it. We hold the feeling, and often in certain parts of our bodies. So it's quite nuanced, and it's actually a lot more detailed than most people have given it time for in, you know, daily life. But having emotional intelligence really is that ability to feel your feelings, know where it sits, know what it feels like, know maybe why you're feeling it, maybe understand where it's coming from, and then be aware that you have a personal awareness that the feelings that you're carrying and the emotions that you're projecting within yourself are, or to others, sorry, are impacting other people, that you can have an effect on other people by feeling what you're feeling. And then when you develop that self-awareness and that ability to have that self-awareness, this is how you can be able to read other people, understand people better. It's really a way of developing empathy, I guess, because you're understanding yourself first, and then you're able to apply that to your interactions with others. And often that's done with verbal and non-verbal cues. So verbal cues, obviously speaking. Now, speaking isn't just words. Speaking is tone of voice, volume, pitch, speed, speaking other words that you choose versus the words that you don't choose. So it's very, even something as external as speaking, it has an effect. And then the non-verbal cues are even more nuanced. So they can be quite obvious. It might be something as like, you know, walking away, shutting the door, turning around, something quite obvious to the receiver. But it's also nuanced and tiny little movements, you know, so it can be the little twitch of an eye, or pulling the lip in a certain way, or a certain look that is so brief and so subtle. And emotional intelligence helps you to develop that ability to read those cues. So yeah, I guess you can all think back on people that you might have met, or a family member. I know that I can think of an uncle who used to turn up at Christmas parties, and it really seemed like he had very low emotional intelligence because he was saying all the wrong things at all the wrong times. He was kind of stepping all over people in the conversation, and that wasn't just verbally, but emotionally stepping over people and not being able to read those cues. The good news is that no matter where we are on that level, so starting from someone like this uncle that turned up at Christmas to someone who's quite reasonably emotionally intelligent, the good news is that it's a skill. It can be taught, it can be learned, and it can be developed. So if you approach it from a growth mindset and understand that no matter where you're at, you will be able to improve emotional intelligence if you're interested in doing so. That's a really relieving thing to hear and to understand, that you're not stuck with what you've got. You know, if you're interested, you can improve it. And I think in any kind of modern space that we are in, modern work environments, it really is important that we have that human connection, that we understand each other, even more so that we are working from home, we're electronic, you know, we're seeing each other over cameras instead of face to face. Oops. So emotional intelligence, we can see have 4 pillars, right? Anyone who's investigated this might know Daniel Goleman, so this is taking some of his work. He originally talked around there being 5 sections or pillars of emotional intelligence, but in more recent years, he's formulated that into 4. And as you can see, the first 2 are around self, the top levels, so self-awareness and self-management. And the bottom areas are around others, so social awareness and relationship management. So self-awareness is really obviously, you know, awareness of yourself, awareness of your emotions and the impact your emotions can have on others. Self-management is really the ability to take charge, balance and regulate your own emotions. Social awareness is the ability to understand your social environment and the feelings of other people. So being aware that other people, A, have feelings, and B, are influenced by their feelings. And then relationship management is really your ability to communicate with other people and bond with others. So this comes down to leadership, mentoring, group dynamics, facilitation, and that kind of thing. It does obviously go a lot deeper than this, but it's a nice place to start. Whoops. I'm not sure what happened there. Okay. So in the workplace, I think it's already been touched on. the idea that emotional intelligence is increasingly being recognized as an asset. And I think, you know, it's not just the agile environment, it's really any modern professional environment where you can see that we're moving further and further away from people having to do things, because so much is being automated now. And we're coming down to the fact that a lot of work that actually takes place is knowledge-based and requires interactions between people, humans, and soft skills. So the soft skills are the kinds of things that can't be automated at this point in time. And the soft skills are really what are going to be important in terms of getting things done and getting them done productively and efficiently. So obviously, efficiency and the ability to get things done in a strategic and mindful way is really going to help workplaces moving forward. It's also noted in job interviews. So this is, you know, it's been around for a while that you get kind of behavioral questions in your job interviews. You also get psychometric testing. They check your referees. When they're checking your referees, they're checking what kind of person you are. You know, they're not checking if you did a test or what kind of IQ you have. They're checking how you are and how you relate to others, because that's really the final decision sometimes between two candidates, is how do they interact with others? How do they manage relationships? So it is really, really important, and it does impact on job performance. So research is showing that having a high emotional intelligence is actually has more of an impact on your ability to perform your job well than your IQ. So if you were choosing between two people, you would go with the person with a higher emotional intelligence versus the higher IQ. So it really is quite an important thing to have. And not only that, if I haven't convinced you enough yet, emotional intelligence is something that spans across your life. So it's not just the workplace. If you're working on improving your emotional intelligence, you will see improvements in your workplace, but you will also see it at home and in the rest of your life. As Daniel Goleman says, motivation aside, if people get better at these life skills, everyone benefits. The brain doesn't distinguish between being a more empathic manager and a more empathic father. If you build your skills in being an empathic manager and your relationships being built and being well communicated, this is also going to apply to your home life, whether it's your relationship with your children, with your partner, with your housemate, whatever kind of relationships that you have. And for me, that's one of the biggest drivers, because especially now, as we've had the last, 18 months or so almost, we've had people working from home. And it's really, really important that the working life and the home life both have balance, and that the working life and the home life don't overlap each other, in the sense that someone who works really, really hard has a tendency to, bring home their work a lot more easily now if they're just stepping out of their room and stepping into their kitchen. It's really, it takes a lot to be able to manage themselves, calm themselves down, regulate their emotions, even more so than before. So yeah, there's a high amount of stress on people at the moment. There's a high amount of stress, especially right now. And emotional regulation is really, really paramount, I think, for us to have good working modern relationships. So you might have a few questions, but I just want to move into the next section. So if you do have questions, just jot them down, or any points you want to make. We'll be moving into the discussion very soon. But first of all, we're going to talk a little bit around what is mindfulness. And this is, something I'm very passionate about sharing with people, because like I said, it's changed my life. And as Arthur mentioned before, it's not about sort of drifting off and getting in the zone. It's really about tuning in. And I've got this great quote here from the Greater Good Science Center out of UC Berkeley. And there are many, many quotes, but I really like this one. Mindfulness is maintaining a moment-by-moment awareness of our thoughts, feelings, bodily sensations, and surrounding environment through a gentle, nurturing lens. So first of all, we break it down. We'll talk about moment by moment. And for some people, it might be the first time that you really think about this, that life is really just a series of moments. As much as we want to plan for the future or think about the past, we really are only available and alive in this specific moment. So of course we have to plan, we have to think about the future to a certain extent, because we're living in a world and people depend on us and we depend on things. But in reality, we only have this moment. And when you start to really consider that, I think it's very freeing and it brings a lot of relief, because we spend so much of our time in the background, thinking about our past, maybe thinking about what we should have done or what we wish we had done, or, all the things that happened in the past. We're creating stories there. We're creating stories about our future, whether it's just something simple like, what are we doing after this Zoom? I'm hungry. I want to think about dinner. Where's my partner? Or you might be thinking about the future in terms of things like your dreams and your aspirations, or getting stuck on some kind of hypothetical of what might be happening. I know the other day I went to the doctor. I actually broke my toe. My toe is broken at the moment. And I don't know why, but I could see the doctor behind the screen, and I knew that he was getting my results for my broken toe. And he was spending a really long time looking at his computer. And then he was like pulling over another colleague, and they were talking and discussing. And I'm like, surely it's just a broken toe. What have they found? Oh my God, it's an X-ray. And I went down this huge story and I don't do this much, so that's why I've got it here. It's a good story to tell you. I had this, like hypothetical scenario all laid out. I was thinking about, what am I going to tell my children? And of course there was nothing. So he came out, he got me. He said he had problems accessing the X-rays, and he was just getting his colleague to help him to sign in and get the X-rays. But in the meantime, I had created this scenario that I thought was happening in my mind, that he'd found this horrible thing in my X-ray and he had to have this deep conversation with me about it. And it's amazing how much of our time we spend doing things like that. Of course, it's exhausting. It's really exhausting to get stuck thinking about the future, thinking about the past. So if we allow ourselves to accept that we are only in these moments, there's an incredible freedom. We can just exist, and existing is perfect. It's wonderful. It's beautiful. Life is incredible. To think that we are here, you're sitting down, you've got your physical body here, you've got your people that you love around you or somewhere nearby, or that you can call somebody. You've got these contraptions here, the computer, these transmission of electronic waves, etc., being able to enable us to have contact. Life is pretty incredible. We don't have to take a holiday. We don't have to, get on top of a mountain and become some kind of Buddhist monk to appreciate the fact that every moment that we have really is a gift, and we really are lucky to just be here and have our heart beating. And when you take that moment by moment awareness and sit and feel yourself breathe and appreciate that you are here and everything's fine where you are right now, then this is, like I said, incredibly freeing. So we have this moment by moment awareness in mindfulness. It doesn't happen all the time. It happens fleetingly. It happens more often if you choose to do it. So really, mindfulness is a choice, and you can make that choice anytime you want. So it's a moment by moment awareness of a myriad of things all at the same time. And it sounds hard to do. It sounds really easy, and it sounds really hard. And it is hard at the beginning. but it gets easier and easier the more that you do it. So with this awareness, we have awareness of our thoughts. They call this, you probably heard this before, the monkey mind. We have these crazy minds going off in all the different directions. And just by being aware, we can sort of just view the monkey. And viewing that monkey running around, having a thought about the future, having a thought about the past, making a plan or a scenario, it just allows us to observe it. So we have thoughts, we have feelings. We have feelings at any given time, all the time. They might be quite neutral and subtle feelings versus quite high and extreme feelings, but we do have feelings. We are feeling-driven humans, and feelings exist within our body. So we can start to, when we start tuning in, we realize that there is a feeling that sits in a certain place, often in our core, in our torso, but it affects our body. So we tune in, we start to see that that feeling of frustration is actually creating tension in our shoulders. And that feeling of nervousness is creating a kind of butterflies in our tummy. So feelings exist physically within us. And they obviously, thoughts and feelings often drive our behavior, which is something we're going to turn to next. We have bodily sensations, you know, hunger, have to go to the bathroom, all of those sensations. We start tuning in a little bit more. And the surrounding environment. So the surrounding environment could be something quite, you know, just your 3 by 4 meter room, or it can be, if you're sitting outside, you know, quite a vast distance, but your entire environment exists from just something very, very close to you to something quite far away. And when we're observing this, we are doing it through not cold observation. We're doing it through gentle, nurturing lens. So a gentle, nurturing lens really takes that sense of kindness and benevolence towards what you're observing. There's an acceptance and an understanding that you're human, and that you have these thoughts. When we find our monkey mind running around, we don't have to chastise it or judge it. We can just say, oh yeah, there's my monkey mind. There's that thought again. There's my planning mode. And we can come to it with more of a kind point of view. So we're fully present. There's no past and no future when we are mindful. We are not judging, and we are not trying to direct the process. So I hope that sort of makes sense in a nutshell. And as I was saying, when you start to have that ability to observe yourself, you start to see that there is a space between when you receive information when you process that information within yourself, and when you respond to that information. So this quote here typically is applied to Viktor Frankl, but people have not actually found the direct source of the quote. So bear that in mind, but people think it's from him. The quote is, between stimulus and response, there is a space. In that space is our power to choose our response. And in our response lies our growth and our freedom. So we have this ability, when we start to slow down, when we start to become aware of that, those thoughts, feelings, sensations, we start to realize, you know, there's maybe that person is saying something and the tone of voice just rubs you up the wrong way. And your typical response is a reaction where there is no space, there is no pause, and you just respond, you react, you get angry. But maybe if you're slowing down and you're in that moment, instead of responding straight away to your immediate reaction, you take a moment, you have that space, you take a breath, and you choose a response. It may be the same reaction, it may be to get angry, because we are guided, you know, behaviorally by our emotions. We are quite emotion driven, and sometimes we don't stop ourselves in time. And sometimes the behavior is so habit forming, or it's been formed by habit over so much time that it's such an immediate reaction. But over time, with more and more practice, you tend to have more and more power to choose your responses and being able to navigate your relationships in a different way. So it's a very powerful tool. And I think we're going to move into the breakout rooms. So that's nice. I'm glad I got through that. I hope it wasn't too fast for everybody. So what I'll do is, as you can see here, we've got an individual activity that we're going to do for 2 minutes. And then we're going to move into group discussion. So I'm going to talk through the activity first. And I'm actually going to show you with my hands a couple of the activities. But before we do that, it might be a good idea for you guys to either take a screenshot of this section or just jot down the group questions. So you can see here the 3 questions we've got. How do you feel? What does a lack of mindfulness look like? And give a concrete example of a lack of mindfulness that you have seen or experienced in your life. And what are some approaches to becoming more mindful that you could incorporate into your team? So as I said, these 3 questions will be following the activity that you're going to be doing. So I'll just give you a minute to jot that down or prepare yourself. Okay, hopefully, I'm just pulling up the chat. Okay, so hopefully, go away chat. We can, how do I get rid of this? Does anyone want to admit Anthony into here?
I've just admitted Anthony.
Yeah. Cool. Thank you.
No worries. How many people did you want in each breakout room? Or we've got about 20 people, so are we thinking of groups of 4 or 5?
4 or 5, yeah. But before we move into that, I'll just stop the screen sharing. So you can see here, there's 3 different activities, guys. The first one is trace your hand, stop, breathe, and listen, and finger tap. So I'm going to stop sharing. Okay, can you guys all see me now? Yeah.
Yep.
Okay. So I'm gonna ask you to choose one of these 3 activities, and I'm gonna just talk through each of them so that you know. And when you move into your breakout room, you don't have to all do the same one, so you can just do your own and then discuss it together. It doesn't matter which one you're doing. Okay. So the first one is called Trace Your Hand, and it's really just a way to bring the sense of mindfulness. All of these are really a way to bring you into a sense of mindfulness. So you just take one hand, you take the opposite hand, index finger, turn the hand to face you. So you've got your palm facing towards you, and you're going to be using your index finger to start at the base of the thumb. And you're going to trace, I'll just try to show you here. You're going to trace around, I'm going to do this fast and you're going to do it slowly, or I'll show you slowly. So you're going to trace around the profile of your fingers. So hopefully you can all see that. And you come all the way down to the bottom of the other side of the hand, go back to the beginning again. When you're doing it mindfully, you're slowing everything down. And it's not about doing it as slow as you possibly can. It's about doing it mindfully. So that means you apply your mind to the action. So you're using your mind only to bring yourself into this activity by taking your index finger, and when you touch it, you pause and you think about the temperature, you think about the pressure, you think about the sensation on the skin of one side and the skin of the other, and you move with mindfulness through the process. And when you're doing it, you're absolutely focused and thinking only of that. Yeah. So you take your time with that. The second one that you're doing, if you choose to, is just stop, breathe, and listen. And it's just as simple as that. So you stop what you're doing, literally put down your devices, etc. Breathe in and out and listen. And when you're listening, you're simply listening to all the external world going on around you, all the way into your internal world. And if you can, you might even hear your heartbeat, or you might hear your breath coming in and out. And of course, your mind is going to wander. Remember that we all have a monkey mind, and it's completely natural. And you just keep on coming back. Okay, there's my monkey mind. I have to come back and stop, breathe, and listen. So that's the second one. The third one is also involving the hands, and that's finger tapping. So you can do it on 2 hands or just 1. And you use your thumb as a protagonist. And basically, same as before, you're doing it as slowly as you can, as mindfully as you can. And you're being aware of the joints involved in moving these hands, these fingers together. You're being aware of the pressure between the fingers when they touch. You're being aware of the space between them, and so on. So those are the 3. Does anyone need me to repeat them, or want to check something before we get started?
Sorry,
Okay.
Ruth, maybe if you can just pop it up on the screen for a second again, just so that anyone who hasn't captured the screenshot.
Where are we? There we go. Can you see that? Oh, no, you can't. Sorry. That was just not. Okay. Nah, does everyone see that?
No, oh, there we go. Yes.
Okay. The other, do you want me to bring the questions back as well?
No, I think that should be fine. Thank you.
Okay.
So should I create the rooms now?
Yeah, so just be aware, guys, we're going to have John 2 minutes or so on this. And then if we can indicate either people, you need to keep a awareness of the time, or we can let people know when the 2 minutes is up. And then I want you to move into your group discussion. So just sharing what your thoughts are on it. So we'll keep that all in the breakout room.
Cool.
Then, sorry, John, then we'll come back. So if you can elect one speaker, we'll come back and share how, what came up for you.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Okay.
all done now. You can go.
Cool. I'll create the rooms now.
Thanks.
So you've all been invited to your rooms. So Maria, you're not joining a room? Ah, Maria's joined. So we've got Young and Rachel. Hi, Rachel, are you having difficulty getting into a room? Hi, well, I just thought I'd pop in and see how you guys are going.
Hi, John. Thanks for organizing this.
No worries. It was more Craig this one than me.
So we're doing the activity individually before we move on to discussion.
Yes, I need to to leave because I need to bring an extra person into this room for you.
Yeah, thank you.
Hi, Wei. Hello, Wei.
Hello, John. How are you?
Good, good. It's we're not the only people in this meeting. Everyone's in breakout rooms at the moment.
All right. Okay, that's all right. I'll
So it's
just stay here.
a mindfulness exercise. It should be done in a few minutes. I think there was specific instructions with a specific thing that they needed to do. If you want, I can add you to one of the breakout rooms so that you can observe what they're doing.
That's okay. That's all right. That's fine. I was late for. I'm an hour late, so that's fine.
No worries.
Thank you. Anyway. Yeah.
All right. No worries.
Cheers.
Okay. Bye.
Bye.
But,
Yeah.
Oh, there we go.
welcome, John. We've just started on to how do you feel?
Cool. Okay.
I felt frustrated because we were so
So we give an example of what does a lack of mindfulness look like?
Yep. Do you want to go first, Christian?
Drag back, kicking and screaming.
Hey,
Hi.
how'd everybody go? I'm not sure if everybody got the message to or realized that they could do the discussion. Did everyone get a chance to discuss, or was everyone just doing the mindfulness?
We started discussing and then got dragged back in here.
Yes,
Apologies.
indeed.
Was that too? Did I bring you guys back too early?
Probably.
You clearly wanted to have us around, John.
Of course.
Would you like some time to discuss those questions, or should we just do it all as a group here?
I think as a group will work well.
Yeah.
Sorry?
I think as a group will work well.
Yep. Okay. So I'll sort of step back a little bit here so you guys can take lead. Feel free to unmute yourself or put your cameras on, and I just want to open it up to discussion without me jumping in and facilitating it too much. So go ahead, anyone with comments,
For myself, I'm curious what people think a lack of mindfulness looks like, particularly at work.
Running around like headless chooks. Reacting.
I tend to put it in a context of also power. When there's not mindfulness, you find those in power often override those that are perceived as being less valued.
That's a great point.
So you think that the higher level management really need to be the ones, I guess, demonstrating mindfulness?
I think all people need to demonstrate mindfulness, but if you're seen as a less valued person, you don't have the authority to, or you can see that you don't have the authority to call somebody else back into line. Because I agree with other speakers where they said, yeah, people are running around. I've been in sales organizations where you've got a deadline coming up, you know, Friday, 5 o'clock, the tender has to be selected. The poor secretaries and the people that are collating it all just get basically, yeah. And to me, if you was mindful, you would see the stress and all the non-verbal cues, but we're so focused on what I have to get done that it overrides everything else. And I think if there was more mindfulness there, you would actually get some degree of sensitivity and awareness.
I think another symptom you have of lack of mindfulness in not just the workplace, but anywhere, is where people tend to think that other people are very similar to themselves. So they're not able to understand the diversity of people seeing the world through a different lens to the lens that they see the world in.
Really good point.
Guys, I think it actually creates a lot of miscommunication or lack of just understanding each other from a communication point of view, especially in the workplace where there's big groups and you're all having to talk and do a lot of cross-functional work together.
One thing that occurs to me is that often, like a lot of people, I really enjoy that buzz of pushing a deadline. One of the things that does, though, is that it stops me stepping back and going, oh, what are my choices here? You know, I lose mindfulness, and so sometimes make really bad choices because I'm not stepping back to recognize I do have choices. I don't have to just rush around and finish that bit off.
And I think also with mindfulness, you often, that stepping back, sort of saying to yourself, especially in a diverse work environment, home environment, what am I missing? What am I not picking up here? Yeah. I think without having that mindfulness sort of under foundation, you just go in and do your stuff that you've got to do.
Yeah. And I'll add to that I think it's often, this is where the well-being aspect comes in, that if you're not really looking after yourself, you don't have that ability because you might be tired, or you're not, you're overrun by, you're not feeding yourself properly. So if you're looking after the other sections of your life a little bit more, it can actually help you to be more mindful as well. You're not driven by hunger or tiredness.
And I think if you're stressed and not looking after yourself, there can be a deep-seated anger, and it's sort of like a floating anger. And that then comes out where you just need to lash out. You don't know why you're doing it, but you're so stressed that you've got, something has to leak out.
Does anyone else have anything to add around that question around a lack of mindfulness?
So you're saying a question or a comment?
A comment, sorry. Any points that they have around that?
Well, I think you lose out the depth of conversation, because the conversation is not just the words, it's those other things that you mentioned earlier in terms of body language, in terms of tone of voice, in terms of micro expressions, in terms of if people are going through different things, for example, stress and so on. If you're able to pick that up in someone else, then you can react to them differently than if they're in a different state of mind. So you lose all of that if you're not being mindful, because you're not focused on the moment. Your mind is somewhere in this deliverable that you've got in 3 weeks' time, or whatever the case is.
Right. And how many times do you sit down and have a team meeting where instead of actually listening to the person who's talking, you're formulating what you're going to be saying next? and there's a real, when you are able to be mindful, you can connect, you're able to build those relationships so much more easily because you see people as a human being and you're able to connect on that level. You're picking up on those subtle cues as well. So, sometimes somebody, you say, especially at work, you'll say, how are you? And someone says, I'm fine. And that's all it is, right? But if you are able, it's not going to happen every time, but you might be able to pick up on that little tiny inflection in the voice that is like, oh, maybe that person is actually not fine, and start to investigate what's going on there and build those supportive team relationships, which ultimately is going to lead to a more cohesive work environment as well. And that's the same at home. So, it's a win-win. Yeah.
I think part of the lack of being mindful is if you're not being mindful of yourself, it's harder to then pick up on those cues and that from other people as well. So you're not picking up on, oh, that doesn't sound right, I should follow that up, because you're not used to actually setting aside that time and doing it for yourself.
Right. Exactly. Yeah, because it's sort of, there's this message within our culture of just powering on, power through, instead of like slowing down and tuning in. It's kind of like, yep, she'll be right, keep on going. And sometimes we miss out on those cues from within ourselves as well. Yeah. And this is where you can see relationship breakdown, or just, it can be simple. It can be just like you live your life and you're not really connected with yourself, and that's okay, you're living along normally, but it can have quite dire effects as well if you're not tuning in, and you, instead of thinking like, oh wow, I'm tired, I had a big week and I'm really stressed and I should maybe go have a warm bath or go and call a friend, you go straight for a couple of drinks of wine instead. So it can make a difference in the choices that you're making. The other question that was there was, if you were bringing more mindfulness into your workplace, what would that look like? Does anyone have any thoughts around that?
I think I would encourage curiosity. I would encourage people to be curious, not only about themselves and how they operate and how they work, but how they interact with other people, and how other people like to work, and how they like to, simple things like receive information, be asked to do something. Do they like that in an email? Do they like to be a phone call? Do they want to do it face to face? And getting to know people a little bit better in the way that they operate. So curiosity would be high on my agenda, I think.
I think increased collaboration, because when you know when to communicate with people and what way in which you can communicate with them to get the best effect, because you're aware of the way in which they're responding to how you are communicating, that you'd be able to have a deeper and richer conversation, and that would result in achieving your objectives through that conversation a lot more easily.
Somebody's put here in the comment, being lost in thought for countless minutes, hours, missing out on what's happening around yourself. Yeah, it's a nice one. I might move just to this final section, if that's okay with everybody. Yeah, it's a little bit less information than the last part. Okay. Oops. Looks like that's gone. Can you see the screen?
Yep.
Yeah. Okay. So we were there before. I'll just, sorry, getting myself organized. All right. So just moving on. So bringing emotional intelligence and mindfulness to work. I guess I want to make sure I've got this, drive home the idea that mindfulness is a way of building your attention and focus and observation. Attention and focus are the foundation of self-awareness and empathy. So if we want to build self-awareness, we need to have that focus. We need to tune in and pay attention. And self-awareness and empathy are both critical for developing emotional intelligence. So if you really want to develop emotional intelligence, you start to work on your self-awareness and empathy, and mindfulness is a really great way to do that. And just going a little bit into some detail here, when we're looking at complex task performance. So some of you might have heard of the Yerkes-Dodson law. It was formulated a long time ago, still applicable today. So it's really just looking at the concept of performance and arousal being your stress levels on performance on tasks. So if you have a simple task, your ability to perform increases as your stress increases. So what they find tends to be that if you're performing a very simple task, the higher level of arousal or stress, I guess, physiological, emotional stress you have applied to that task, the more likely it is that you'll perform well. However, as the task gets more complex, and this obviously applies in a modern workplace, especially an agile environment with a lot of moving parts, then it is better to have a lower level of arousal in order to achieve a higher performance. And mindfulness is a way of being able to reduce your stress levels while performing a difficult task. So it is a very beneficial if you apply it in this context. So ideas. So we've already talked about a few of these. The idea of effective listening. So effective, active listening, and they call it listening until you don't exist. So instead of being in a team meeting and just thinking either about lunch or thinking about, what you're going to say, or considering, what work you're going to do next and how it's a waste of time, or whatever a story is going on, try to be aware that that story is happening and just bring yourself back to the speaker, listening to the speaker, paying attention to their words, paying attention to the information they're providing, being an effective listener. This is a big one. And, you can imagine how this is going to build not only relationships, but have more effective production of the work, that you don't have to repeat yourself. The information is getting shared very clearly, or much more clearly than it was before, and it's going to lead to more effective work. 1 minute of focused breathing. So this is a way to bring it in without sort of overriding, the whole workplace. If people are not into mindfulness very much, you can just sort of say, hey, how about we start the team meeting with a minute of focused breathing every time we have a meeting. And if you look into the research of mindfulness, which I didn't go too much into, you'll understand that there is a lot of good evidence around the physiological benefits of just slowing down and becoming mindful. So if you take a moment to slow down, focus on your breathing, you're going to bring yourself more into the present moment. So you're able to remove your brain from wherever it was, bring it into your body and bring it into that moment that you're in. You'll be able to open your eyes and pay more attention to what's going on. But physiologically, you're also going to feel more relaxed. You're going to access the relaxation response, and you're going to, tune in to yourself a whole lot better. So you might be a little more aware of what's going on. So this is one way that people like to introduce tiny bit of mindfulness. And if they're not into it, if you don't think your team will be into it, you can also just bring it into your day, in different ways. So you could bring it in the morning, just a minute. It's, really low bar to jump over here. It's not a high bar jump. Self-reflection. So someone has already talked a little bit around self-reflection. And it's just, again, if you're a team leader or you're working with people or just for yourself, encouraging some time to self-reflect. You can ask yourself, what are my emotional strengths and weaknesses? So understanding that, it's not all bad to have emotions, that they can be quite beneficial and useful. And so we do have strengths there, but we can also have weaknesses, and acknowledging them as a team is actually great because you can support each other through it and understand each other that little bit better. Now, the second question, what's going on beneath the surface that's influencing my behavior? And this is really where we start to think about, you know, you've got a team member who hasn't mentioned, I mean, you know that he's had a baby, but he hasn't mentioned that the baby's teething at the moment and he's been waking up most nights of the week, just handling the baby crying in the middle of the night. And that's having an effect. He hasn't mentioned it, doesn't think it's either a big deal or maybe not the kind of, you know, not good to make an excuse for yourself, but it is actually having an effect on this person's state. And, you know, that might be what's going on. Or there might be something going on with, you know, this person feeling angry about something that somebody said not that long ago, but it's influencing their behavior right now. So maybe tuning in and asking yourself those questions. What's my current state of mind, body, and how is it affecting what I say and do? So children are a great example of people who, you know, if they could answer this question, it would be really, really helpful, but they can't most of the time. So my son is 4 years old, and he's starting to get some language around explaining what's going on for him. But, you know, in the last couple of years, we've just basically had to do guesswork and piece together what might be going on when he's having a tantrum or when he wants to bite his sister. And, you know, we can try to trace it back by what's going on. You know, we can ask yourself, okay, when did he last eat? How much did he eat? Was it a big lunch or a small lunch? How much sleep did he get last night? So what's his current state of mind, body? I have to do that work for him because he's not able to do that for himself yet. So being able to tune into yourself and ask that can also affect you. Maybe you just need to go and have lunch or leave work early, you know, an hour or two early and just have a bit of time at home, or go for a walk at lunchtime and get out of the office. So asking those questions can be really helpful. And again, you either do it for yourself, or if you've got a team that you want to start to build those connections with, you might be able to do weekly check-ins, bring it into your meetings, etc. Visual reminders. Now, it sounds a bit cliche, but these can be really helpful for people who need cues. So you could put up signs in the office, you could put up messages on the wall, you can create a space where it's more readily available within your office to be a place of calm, peacefulness, a place to take a breath. If you're working from home, you can have screensavers. You can just send someone an email that they open up and just kind of says, breathe, in big letters. You know, there's lots of ways that you can visually remind people that that they can take that space. Messages of connection. This is a really, really good one. So this is not gratitude, but it is based around the idea of gratitude, but it's gratitude for someone else. And it's not a personal reflection. It's actually a reflection to another person. So at the end of each day, and you can do this for as long as you want, really, but at the end of each day, you think back over your day and think of a person who has made a difference in your day in some way. And it can be large or small. They might have held the door open for you. They might have smiled at you at one point. You just needed that smile. They might have helped you out with a project. So all varying sizes of help. But you reach out to that person, you write a short note. It can be by pen and paper, or it can be by email. And you just say, dear John, thank you so much for smiling at me earlier on today. I really appreciate it because I was feeling a bit stressed about this, and you just helped me to shift my perspective. You know, so just those messages, you can set that up with your team, do it for a certain amount of time. And there's a lot of some really good evidence coming out that this boosts well-being for yourself and for the receiver. So that's a really interesting one. I do have a guide if anyone's interested. There's like 20 different ideas for you if you're interested in sort of bringing more mindfulness into your workplace. Feel free to let me know. I'll just email it to you. Easy. And closing. So we can just close with these questions. We're going to open it up again just for short discussion, 5 or 10 minutes. You can answer these questions or you can have your own questions. So first one, do you think emotional intelligence is important in a Scrum team? How can you apply what you've learned about emotional intelligence and mindfulness to your particular team or workplace? Do you think this is a feasible idea for you? Is it nuts? Is it a great idea? Where does it sit with you? And if anyone has questions, we can open that up now. So I'll bring that. Oh, sorry, last part. Thank you very much for having me. And I will stop sharing the screen now. Back to the group. So feel free to unmute yourself, answering, you know, those questions from before or anything else.
Okay, in Scrum teams or anywhere, I think if you've got emotional intelligence and a foundation of mindfulness, I think your team will become more innovative. I think, you know, it's that safe to fail type environment where you can ask dumb questions. You're willing to say, I don't understand, because you're not going to be shot down. So yeah, you get a lot of better teamwork, better innovation coming out. Yeah.
One of the things, following on from something you were saying before, Penelope, that by being mindful, demonstrating emotional intelligence and so on, you make more room for other people to be themselves and be mindful within themselves. But that also means that the ways in which they're different start getting expressed. And that difference helps prompt creative responses from the rest of the team. A related thought that occurred to me, when people are doing a Scrum effectively, it's a kind of mindfulness practice. It's situating yourself in, this is what's been, this is where we're going, but here we are, listening to each other and acknowledging and respecting what each other has said, for this nice little moment where we get a chance to share with each other what we're thinking, what's been going on for us.
Yep.
I think that it's more important to have mindfulness in Scrum teams than in other types of teams, or should I say in Agile teams, just because of the fact that you are dealing with cross-functionality and you're dealing with a much higher degree of communication. So you need to have that awareness of where other people are, more so than you would have with other methods. With a lot of the sort of, if you go back to the old waterfall days, you produce a document, you throw it over the wall. You don't need mindfulness. You just need to write documents. So it's a very different thing to be able to see whether somebody's putting forward a particular point of view because they're in a particular state of mind, or is it because this is the way they see the objective that you need to get to. So that's why I'm thinking that mindfulness is much more applicable to Agile ways of working than they are to any other form of working. I can't think of a pattern of work that would be more applicable to.
I'd do a yes and to that, John. I would say hugely important in an Agile way of working, but even if you're not, hugely important in terms of just writing that deep, big requirements document mindfully is going to be better than doing it distractedly.
Yes.
But yes, the emotional intelligence, the connection in collaborative cross-functional teams, hugely important. And with the nature of work as we've got in many organizations today, with the horrible term hybrid and remote and scattered and whatever you want to call it, there's a lot more need for the deliberateness, for that mindful thinking. and an approach to doing things.
So it's probably also really important when you have remote teams. I'm just thinking, to follow on from your statement on that, is that you need to maintain that high level of collaboration, but at the same time you don't have as much bandwidth in your communication. So you have people on the screen as opposed to in real life, which means that you don't get as much information coming through. So you have to be much more attuned to the information that you do get.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And prepared to challenge your own assumptions.
Yes. Yes.
Do you have any advice on how to improve this mindfulness in sort of online meetings and that sort of setting?
Sorry, did you have a question?
Do you have any advice on how to improve this sort of mindfulness in this sort of online, when we're sort of having online meetings and that sort of setting?
I think you've touched on it a little bit here, in terms of having that self-awareness. So when you're starting out with the self-awareness with mindfulness and understanding where you're coming from, then you have that empathy to understand other people a little bit better. But yeah, there are certain practices that could help, but also just tuning in a whole lot more to that person. So it's really just, I guess, pushing yourself that little bit further, firstly to be mindful and focused, but also to be open to the fact that you're not getting the full information, especially with this environment, understanding that we are all coming at this with less information and with more pressure. So we're all coming at it with more pressure from home, because if you are working from home, you've got other factors to maintain in your home life. And so that's where the human aspect comes in. So yeah, I don't know if that doesn't entirely answer your question, but really, like I said, you would boost the mindfulness and reduce the assumptions and judgment is really what I would say.
Thank you.
And then, sorry.
No, I was just saying thank you.
Oh, no, I was just going to say, and then there are sort of team-based practices, that you could do with a facilitator. You could do certain kinds of things over Zoom that could help boost connection. So.
I'd just add one thing that I've been using with a group of people that's really worked well, and this probably relates, possibly Ruth, you could fill me in the activity you told us to do here, which is touch, but also I guess visually. So in a meeting, we'd open up, it might be a question, all right? So it could be one of the questions you just asked there. And if somebody wants to contribute, then prior to speaking, they'd raise something. So I might just raise my phone to say, I'm ready to speak. And then I would say what I want to say. And then when I finished, I just raise it again to let everybody know the floor is now open. And the idea is it's called Unhurried Conversation. I urge you to look it up. It's there's a whole website there with information on it. And it just helps people to be able to have their time to speak. And it sets the sort of, I guess it sets the scene for everybody to know that there's a time to listen. So because it's visual as well, it helps people notice things, and you're very aware. Like, I'm really aware when I lift it up, like I'm going to have to contribute now, and it needs to be worthwhile and valuable.
Yep, that's nice. Yeah, that's a great practice.
Unhurried conversation.
Cool. Thank you, Maria. Yeah, I'll look that up. I like it. It's it's basically using a visual anchor, to like you said, to signal, and then that obviously brings that mindfulness to yourself and to the team as well. It's nice. Yeah. Cool. So does anyone have any other, any questions or anything you want to cover before we close off? Let's see. Oh, yeah.
Can I ask a question out of curiosity? This is just me really curious about the group, because I work by myself, so I don't have a team, but I'm really fascinated by people that do work in teams, and I try and help those people. But I'm interested to see how many of you here tonight feel that you have a team where, let's just say, the majority are either mindful or not. Maybe if you think that the majority of your team are mindful, can I see a thumbs up? Because I just want to get a gauge. I'm really curious to see what our perceptions of that might be.
So you have a mindful team, Michael. Oh, sorry, John.
Yes.
So I said Mike. Yeah.
John and Arthur, yes.
And Young.
Yep. So probably about just a quarter, maybe.
Yeah, so people that go out of their way to make sure that the people around them are feeling comfortable and they understand the state of mind that they're in, and are wanting to increase their ability to pick up on the sort of non-verbal cues and react to that in terms of the way that's in the interactions with the other people. So even to the extent of at the beginning of a lot of meetings saying, what color are you today? Are you red, yellow, or green? And then sort of start from there. So I think those sort of things help a lot.
And do you, are there people within your team fostering that increased mindfulness, or is it just the certain personalities that are in the group?
Well, I guess I'm part of a number of different teams, because there's a bit of an overlapping arrangement. So to a certain extent, with some of the teams, it's personality driven, but with others, that's really been embraced by the whole team.
Right. Cool. Okay. Any other final questions or points anyone wants to raise? Okay, cool. Well, wow, right on 7. Good timing. Thank you so much, guys, for having me for this session. It's nice to meet people. Feel free to reach out. Happy to connect. And I think if it's okay, I'd like to just scan through the comments, because I didn't get a chance to read them. So I'm always curious to see, catch up on what kinds of little points people have made there. And yeah, I'll send through things if there's, I don't know if you're going to have a follow-up place with the recording or.
Yeah, so I'll send the recording out to everyone who RSVP'd for the meeting. So Meetup's got that facility where I can upload it to the cloud and then send the cloud link across there.
Oh, you just put it there. Okay, cool. So yeah, and anyone who's interested in any further materials or resources or anything, just let me know. Okay.
Cool.
All right.
Well,
thank you.
Thank you, Ruth, for making the effort and presenting an informative and engaging presentation. I think we've got a lot of people that, my reading of what's in the chat line is that people were engaging, and there's a lot of really positive stuff about what you've done tonight. So thank you for making the time, and thanks to Craig, who's not here but who organised it, and thanks, John, for stepping in and taking care of some of that stuff with Zoom that I still don't know how to do properly.
Well, clearly the same is true on my side, because I think I ended up ripping everyone back early before the thing happened.
Oh, good.
So perhaps one thing before you guys go, just to and also thank you again to Ruth. It was it's amazing how an activity like that changes one's mindset, and you really feel that calmness coming over. That's you realize, you forget what mindfulness is like, and without going through that exercise, it sort of grinds you back again. So thank you very much. I'd like to just mention that I'm about to post the event for next month, which will be on the 3rd Thursday of May, which is, let me just check the dates on that one. So that's on the on the 20th of May. And what we're doing for that event is we're bringing in John Tooth. So I'm not sure if you know, John Tooth has been working very closely with Tony Ponton and also closely with Elaborate. But they've formed an organization called the Remote Agility Framework. And he will be presenting RAF to us and specifically focusing on the doing what is called a virtual obeyer. Now, the focus of the whole drive behind the remote agility framework is to look at, in the COVID world that we're in now, remoteness and being able to work virtually is something that's quite critical to teams. And then it becomes particularly difficult within Agile because of the fact that you need to have an increased cross-functional and collaborative setup. So it performs a really good marriage of those two. So I'm really looking forward to that session, and I'll be sending that out hopefully in the next couple of days, so that you'll be able to see it there, and hopefully we'll see you all at that event. And I've just noticed that Craig has come back and joined us. So I'll hand over to Craig for a couple of last words.
Thanks, everybody. That's all that I have to say today. Thanks, everybody.
That's all you need to say.
So
that's it.
So what did you think of the talk? No, really,
I loved it.
Cool.
No worries.
Yeah, thank you again, Ruth. Apologies I couldn't be here, but I'm sure it was a great session and people got a lot out of it.
Yeah, no worries. I kind of sped through a little bit at the start, so I'm sorry if I overwhelmed everybody, but there's a lot of information to get through there.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
All right.
No, you did fine.
Thanks.
Did done well.
You've done well. Awesome. Great. All right. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, everybody. Thanks for joining us, and we'll see you next month.
Yeah.
Looking forward
See
to
you.
it, John.
Thank you. Cool.
See you,
Good
Craig.
night.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye.